Goldman Sachs would admit to something, would plead guilty, but if it's the Asia unit, what does that mean legally?
So a guilty plea is a bad thing.
Period.
A guilty plea for the parent company or the New York headquarters would be a major black eye. A guilty plea for a division in Singapore would be bad, but it would not be crippling. Lots of other banks over the course of the past decade or 6 or 7 years have entered guilty pleas. And sometimes in a LIBOR case, there was one where there was a guilty plea for a major global bank in LIBOR, but it was the Japan unit. So it's a way of keeping it away from headquarters and locating where the misconduct occurred. However, it's not like just a speeding ticket or a parking ticket for Goldman. There are repercussions here in the U.S. because in order to be a qualified pension asset manager, QPAM, once you enter a guilty plea of any kind, you're suddenly in the penalty box. The Department of Labor, which oversees that, has been fairly flexible and patient with banks that have pleaded guilty and allowed them to, basically get out of this, so it doesn't disrupt their, pension asset management business.
All right, so it looks like Goldman is creating itself a little bit of wiggle room here. What about the relationship with Malaysia itself? What's that going to be?
I think it's not over permanente, but what this does. Malaysia had an opportunity to work with the Justice Department last year and broke away, decided they wanted to do it on their own. So the Justice Department is close to this settlement. Then the Malaysians can ask for whatever sum they want, but Goldman doesn't have to pay them. I think the Malaysian government, which is now in power because of what the Justice Department did in highlighting this fraud and the looting of 1MDB a couple of years ago, the new government, has lost some leverage in terms of getting money out of Goldman. Also, what's not clear is if $2 billion, if it's, let's say, $2 billion Goldman pays to the Justice Department, it's not clear that the Justice Department will keep it. Maybe some of that goes back to Malaysia as part of compensation. Yeah. In fact, the Justice Department has done lots of good things for Malaysia. They are seizing all these properties, these trophy properties that Joe Low acquired over the course of several years, and they're turning it over, basically giving it back to the Malaysian government.
One thing we should make clear, of course, is that Goldman Sachs has said repeatedly that what's happened with the 1MDB scandal is the work of rogue employees as opposed to anything spearheaded by the bank itself. Of course, in admitting guilt, the Asia unit or the Malaysia unit, to what happened there, what else does Goldman give up? I mean, it faces some restrictions, right? It's more than just a fine and admitting guilt.
First of all, no bank ever says, yes, we, the bank, are guilty. There's always that defensive, like, see it's the bad guys. And there clearly are bad guys here. There's a guilty plea, and there's another guy who's been charged. So, but a year ago, it seemed like the Justice Department might go further and further up the chain at Goldman. It seems now that if they're in discussions, that's kind of it. Maybe one more charge, but nothing that was going to shake the bank to its core. Okay. But yes, it's a bad thing. Reputationally, it's really bad for Goldman, which has avoided most of the guilty pleas that other major banks have had to sustain in the past 7 years. So, but some certainty, a defined number will all be good for Goldman on this.